in association with Jaqua Lighting, inspired by the sun, moon and stars.
Hi, welcome to a brand new edition of Gravitas. I am Sana Khan. The big story tonight, an unexpected palace shake-up. Saudi Arabia's King Salman elevated his 31-year-old son to become crown prince. The prince replaces Mohammed bin Nayef, his cousin, who was also removed from his post as the interior minister. The move not only cements the elevation of Mohammed bin Salman, but also marks a seismic shift in the royal succession line. The ramifications could be deep for the oil-rich monarchy and broadly the Middle East region. We also talk about the confusion that exists over the Qatar blockade, with the Secretary of State and the US President giving out distinctly different messages. What is the US administration's policy there? Before we get to that, a quick check of the top stories. A Pentagon report identifies India as best suited to partner with Afghanistan for development and security, replaces Pakistan as prospective partner. It's almost official now. Ram Nath Kovind will be India's next president. JDU's Nitish Kumar offers his support in another jolt to the opposition unity. Protests break out in Minnesota after police release video of the shooting of a black man by a cop who was recently acquitted of murder. Police in Brussels claim to have killed a man who was planning to blow up an underground train station, recover nail bombs from his dead body. Days after the worst fire in London's recent history, survivors are joined by protesters as they march on Westminster demanding urgent changes in fire safety regulations. And from Sydney to China to New York, the world celebrates Yoga Day. United Nations releases a commemorative stamp as Prime Minister Modi reminds the world yoga is India's gift, but a world heritage. Well, we've got a packed show for you tonight. India's Defence Minister is in Russia. We take a closer look at the points of convergence and divergence between the two nations. And also coming up later in the 2 days since Darren Osborne allegedly crashed a van into Muslim worshippers at the Finsbury Park Mosque, one has seen some startling double standards emerging in Britain. The top story first. Saudi Arabia has passed an unusual decree and one that is bound to have consequences on the Middle East. The current king's nephew has been sacked, and taking his place is the monarch's own son, 31-year-old Mohammed bin Salman. The young regent in waiting is a graduate of the London School of Economics and has met and reportedly hit it off with US President Donald Trump and is keen to diversify Saudi Arabia's economy and make it less dependent on oil for its income. But just how much of reform will Saudi society or the country's eagerness to spread its rigid form of Wahhabism see under the young prince? WION senior international editor Padma Rao has the story.
He's known as MBS for short, and he's only 31. Saudi Arabia has a new deputy prime minister and crown prince, the second son of ruling King Salman. But Prince Mohammed bin Salman is no babe in the wood as far as politics is concerned. Prince Salman was and will remain Saudi Arabia's defense minister, a role in which he headed the country's military intervention in the Yemen civil war next door, and one considered his baptism by fire. Prince Salman replaces 57-year-old Mohammed bin Nayef by a royal decree. Bin Nayef has been relieved of all his duties, including the portfolio of Interior Minister. The naming of MBS as the new crown prince bears both domestic and international significance, not only for the war in Yemen but also for the tense standoff with the Emirate of Qatar, which Saudi Arabia cut off ties with on charges of Qatar harbouring terrorists. Domestically, Prince Salman is Saudi Arabia's reformer in many ways. He's been at the helm of Vision 2030, a roadmap to the way the oil monarchy can wean itself off its dependence on black gold as the chief source of income and diversify its economy. It may sound hard to believe, but MBS is also known as a champion of human rights in a country better known for its suppression of them, especially those of its own women, as well as in its multilateral policies overseas, such as in Yemen, where the country has been under fire for the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians, but failing to achieve its purpose of removing Houthi rebels from the impoverished state. But Prince Salman's coming of political age is more than a mere attempt to hand over charge to younger people in politics. It's got a lot to do with Salman's predecessor's reported half-heartedness in isolating Qatar, a turning point in the fierce rivalry for supremacy between Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shia Iran. Both countries back different states in the Middle East, with Iran's support firmly with Qatar, its long-term ally across the Persian Gulf. It was Prince Salman who visited the White House to meet newly elected US President Donald Trump. There he is said to have done the spade work for Trump's landmark and very controversial choice of Saudi Arabia for his first official trip overseas. So will the new Crown Prince Salman smoke a shisha of peace with Saudi Arabia's greatest rival Iran and return Qatar to the fold of Gulf nations? Unlikely. Just last month, Prince Mohammed bin Salman told a Saudi TV channel that Tehran wanted to control the Islamic world and hinted at, and I quote, taking the battle to Iran. And how much is the new Crown Prince going to push the kingdom's Wahhabism? There's no clarity yet, but a key lies in what or whom Saudi Arabia tacitly supports in the Middle Eastern wars. Included in those motley groups is the Islamic State, whose brand of brutal, intolerant Islam, combined with Saudi's rigid Wahhabism, somehow seem a perfect fit. Padma Rao, WION.
And I'm pleased to welcome Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed to the studio here. He's the former Indian ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Oman, as well as the United Arab Emirates. Thank you, Ambassador Ahmed, for joining me. Let me start off by asking you, first of all, do you see this as a surprise move? If so, why? And what is the reason behind this seismic shift that we see in the succession line there?
It is surprising because it was not anticipated by many of us. Now when we look back, we can see very clear trends.
Right.
We can see the steady empowerment of this young prince over the last 2 years. But many of us still believed that natural progression would take place and the Crown Prince, Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, would become the king and this young prince would have his chance. But I think that is not to be. A very dramatic development has taken place and the Crown Prince has been ousted from his position.
Right. And what are the reasons? Why do you think, King Salman has made this choice?
Most observers believe that Prince Mohammed bin Salman is his favorite son.
Okay.
And he's a young person. He is 50 years younger to his father and has been associated with his father for the last few years. He was in his father's office when he was the governor of Riyadh. Right. After that, when he became the Crown Prince, after that when he became the Deputy Crown Prince, and then when he became the Crown Prince. Mohammed bin Salman has been the head of his office in all these positions. And after that, when his father became king, he became the head of the royal court as well. So he's been extremely close to his father, and his father has been elevating him consistently to this day.
Right. So from what you say and the kind of portfolios that Mohammed bin Salman holds, there's a lot of centralization of power.
Absolutely.
That one observes. Do you think that is something which is going to work in favor of the kingdom?
This is not the Saudi way. In the previous 100 years, we did not have any situation where one prince, even if he was king, had the kind of power that this young prince has enjoyed. He is the head of the royal court. He is the defense minister.
Right.
He controls the economic council. He is the architect of Vision 2030. He has been steadily encroaching into the security area. He has brought the domestic intelligence services under him, and a few days ago he brought the criminal investigation department under him as well.
Right.
This is extraordinary, and it is also without precedent.
Right, unprecedented to say the least. But Ambassador Ahmed, also you know, many say the elevation was in the offing. Looking at Mohammed bin Naif, how he failed to play a key role, some analysts say, in Qatar. On the other hand, you had Mohammed bin Salman, who was out and about, taking foreign trips, you know, looking at the country's economy, and also his March visit to the White House, which perhaps laid the groundwork for President Trump's visit then later to the kingdom.
You're right. We have noticed with some surprise that Prince Mohammed bin Naif never appeared in the public domain. And very often he used to be forgotten when you had high-profile events, like when, when King Salman went to the White House, it was his son who went with him. Right. When you had the recent visit of President Trump, again it was this high-profile prince. I don't recall any major event in the last 2 years where the Crown Prince has been visible as a player or as a factor in domestic politics. Over the years, I think over the months, he has been systematically sidelined.
Right. And Mohammed bin Salman very systematically moved to the forefront. Right. Now, the accession of Mohammed bin Salman, do you see this as a clear sign of, handing power to the younger generation of leaders, looking forward at the, social reform, economic changes that the kingdom is looking at this point? And how far one can go when we talk about social reforms in Saudi Arabia?
See, when you look at the next generation, do recall here that the earlier generation, the children of King Abdulaziz, the first son was born in 1902 and the last son in 1948. So even when you look at the next generation, you have a very large age gap between the older people and the younger ones. Also recall that Prince Mohammed bin Naif is of the next generation as well. He's in his 50s. He's a very mature person, he's got an excellent track record. He's a voice of moderation. He was responsible for the reconciliation approach as far as jihadis were concerned. He enjoyed the full confidence of the former king. So he is of the next generation. Did you really need to go to somebody in his 30s who has been in public life for only 2 years, who has to now rule this great country, which is the center of Islam, which is the world's largest petroleum producer, a very major financial center, and a major political role player in regional and world affairs.
So in that sense, this surely comes as a big surprise to, one can say it has trumped Donald Trump's imagination, having Mohammed bin Salman saying that he's the crown prince now. And we've seen this game of chess being played ever since the Qatar blockade. You had these big deals between between Qatar and the United States. So it's like whoever makes that move, which is the most unpredictable. Do you think that Saudi Arabia has managed to rattle the US administration?
Not at all.
No?
I personally feel that it is the Trump administration that has played a key role in the elevation of Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Ties of,
this kind of relationship that they established, a strategic partnership, a military relationship, and a very strong political relationship at the time of the Riyadh summit, that has emboldened Saudi Arabia. And it has encouraged them to take a hardline posture against Qatar as also against Iran. This relationship goes back to March, when at that time Prince Mohammed bin Salman had gone to the White House, had been hosted by President Trump. And of course, he lubricated the relationship with very, very lucrative defense deals.
And
so it is something they have worked together on this.
Also, Ambassador Ahmed, let's talk about ramifications now for Saudi Arabia and the region. That is also going to be very, very important with this, new leadership taking over.
I have concerns on both counts. Domestically, what has taken place is without precedent. The royal family consists of about 30 to 40,000 people. The tradition in the kingdom has been to accommodate people from from the various branches of the royal family, give them a position of some influence, and ensure that no branch is isolated. You have never had a situation where one prince enjoys so much power at the expense of everyone else. The Saudi system has also been consultative and collegial. Even that is now absent.
Right.
You have also humiliated publicly two very distinguished royal family members who were crown princes in their own right.
Right.
You had Prince Mukran, who is the youngest surviving son of King Abdulaziz, and you have also Prince Mohammed bin Naif. Both of them with solid record of public service for their country.
Absolutely.
And today they are
simply,
I mean, they don't seem to matter.
It's going to be interesting to see how the centralization of power is going to pan out for the kingdom, for the region at large as well. Ambassador, please stay with me. There's another story which we're going to be talking about here on Gravitas. Well, he chose Saudi Arabia as his first port of call there. He danced awkwardly with a sword in his hand and signed a $110 billion deal with oil-rich hosts. Barely had Air Force One taken off for the flight home to Washington with US President Donald Trump on board that Riyadh and other Gulf nations cut off diplomatic ties with Qatar, claiming it supports anti-Saudi terrorists. Now, many members of Trump administration, including Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, spoke of mediation. But Donald Trump tweeted in triumph and said, and I quote, "So good to see the visit paying off." Saudi Arabia said they would take a hard line on terrorism and all reference was pointing to Qatar, unquote. Now, by now, Washington's administration was obviously getting accustomed to the unpredictability of its president. They hastily stressed that there is no shift in US policy despite the president's tweets, but it was soon Trump's turn to set a cat among the pigeons yet again. Just days after calling Qatar a high-level sponsor of terrorism, President Donald Trump fast-tracked a pending arms deal for F-15 fighter jets worth $12 billion to Qatar. This was followed by one Defense Department spokesperson thanking Qatar for permitting US troops to continue to use their base in the tiny Gulf Emirate. By now, it was becoming clear to US watchers that both Trump's prolific and contradictory tweeting, followed by more guarded remarks and instant gratification such as sanctioning of 35 fighter jets to Qatar, obviously part of a larger, more elaborate and predictable pattern of the divide and rule policies first put in place by colonial powers and later adapted with enthusiasm by countries harboring neo-imperialist ambitions across the world. Well, let's talk more about this. Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, clearly we have two different perspectives in Qatar when you talk about Donald Trump on the one hand and his Secretary of State on the other. Well, do you think that Trump's more aggressive stance could hinder the efforts that Rex Tillerson is putting out now to mediate at this point?
There is a fundamental dichotomy in the US establishment. You have in President Trump a source of disruption. He is unpredictable, he is flamboyant, he is very articulate, and he speaks out of turn through the social media. Then you have the good sense and gravitas of the establishment figures who are the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense.
Right.
Very often they are not in sync. I believe that the establishment figures, particularly Secretary of State, who has very long experience in West Asia, having been a petroleum person for several years, he has a much more nuanced, much more elaborate, much more serious approach to regional affairs.
Right.
And he would not like to see a split in the GCC, which has now emerged. Therefore, he is the voice of caution and moderation, and would like to reconcile these estranged, brethren.
But do you think the US policy on Qatar comes out to be as very confusing, or do you think it's a deliberate attempt of the divide and rule, carrot and stick policy of the United States?
There is no such thing as US policy anymore. There are the pronouncements of the president, and there are the pronouncements of the State Department and his security officials. So we are bewildered. We have no means of knowing what is US policy. As far as Qatar is concerned, the president had celebrated the sanctions against this island nation and had pointed fingers at them as a state sponsor of terrorism.
Right.
And then you find after they have done the $12 billion deal, 2 ships are sent to Qatar, and they have exercises of the coast of Qatar, and they have then you have the Defense Department thanking the Qatari government for its cooperation. Is this policy? Is this United States, the great nation?
It comes out very confused because of that, but it does seem maybe that the US has a plan. Now, here's what the State Department has said. It has said this, it was mystified that Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt and UAE had not yet made clear their claims against Qatar or what they want to end the blockade. Now, clearly it seems that Rex Tillerson is losing patience. Do you think that that'll be the case and the impasse will go on?
I think the Secretary of State is quite wrong. The coalition supporting Saudi Arabia has been extremely clear, both with regard to their complaints against Qatar and what they demand from Qatar. There is no mystery about it. They demand that Qatar should recant what it has been saying.
Right.
It should cease to host opposition figures, and it should cease to have any links with the Muslim Brotherhood or various people affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and it should rejoin them in their coalition against Iran.
Right.
Fundamentally, it wants it would want Qatar to overturn every position that the country has held over several years. They want total surrender from Qatar.
Right.
I think the Secretary of State knows this. So for him to say that he doesn't know, he's being completely wrong.
Right. I get your point there, Ambassador Ahmed. Now, the gap between Donald Trump and Rex Tillerson seems all the more disturbing, because when the US goes on the negotiating table now, does it mean that what the State Department, what the President is saying, that cannot be taken at face value? That becomes a problem then.
I don't think that the US has any credibility in West Asia. I'm saying this very seriously. United States, the Trump administration and Trump personally has affiliated himself with the Saudi-led Sunni military alliance against Iran.
Right.
He also, in due course, wants to associate Israel with this alliance. But once he has given this promise, this military support, this coalition led by Saudi Arabia doesn't need the United States anymore. They've gone along because they are emboldened by the fact that they have the Trump administration on their side.
Right.
So I don't think the US can play any constructive role in the region at this time.
Right. And what happens if the mediation efforts fail? What would that mean? That would, mean bad times for the US-Qatar ties then?
I don't think there will be bad times for the US-Qatar ties, nor do I believe there will be any mediation. I think we are looking at a very long night, a long night where there will be no improvement, but possibly there will be no regression.
Okay.
Do recall here that Qatar is not without friends. Iran and Turkey, a major Shia country and a major Sunni country, have come forward as allies of Qatar. And all three of them have set up a new regional alliance. And three of them are close to Russia.
Right.
And three of them, Russia, Turkey and Iran, are pursuing the peace process in Syria. And that peace process does not involve the removal of Bashar Assad. So again, that is a setback for the Saudi game plan in Damascus.
And also Qatar is giving money. We just saw a huge defense deal as well.
Qatar has its own position in regional affairs. It has its own ideological position. It supports Islamist movements.
Right.
But it is a moderate country. Do recall that it is also affiliated to Wahhabiyya. But it projects itself as a moderate country, as an accommodative country, as a liberal country. So it is projecting to the world at large that you can be Wahhabi in terms of your ideology, but you don't have to be obscurantist.
Right. That's very well put, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed. So you're saying it's going to be a long night. The status quo will remain because the stakes are very high. Nobody can, do random things like the messages that are coming out of the United States, the administration. Pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us here. Thank you very much, Sana. All right, with that, we're going to be taking a very short break. Up next, we focus on the Indian Defence Minister's visit to Russia. Stay with us. We'll be right back.